If you're gonna do business, you have to be understanding enough, mentally tough enough to realize that it will get better, but you have to fight and you can't stop.
All right, awesome. Here we are with Michael Citron. I'll just get it out of the way in the beginning. We are not related at all. We're just friends who happen to have the same name. Michael is a civil litigator, in other words, a lawyer who lives in Miami and practices in Miami or Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood.
We practice in Florida, but we actually have presence in different parts of the country also. So.
Oh, cool. Okay. I didn't know that. So tell me a little bit about what you currently do.
So right now we do civil litigation, which is a broad term, but we deal with areas of law like class actions, when there's something that's affected a whole bunch of people, so we try to represent their interests. We deal with breach of contract, complex business litigation, real estate transaction, issues of conflict. We don't deal with the transactional side. And then also we deal with a whole host of what's called property insurance areas as well.
Awesome. So basically a lot of different law stuff. So,
yeah, pretty much.
So you mentioned you started in 2017. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So tell me a little bit about your journey and what inspired you to become a lawyer in the first place.
I can go through the same things that I'm sure every lawyer has in their storybook, but I was not succeeding in law school in the way that I was hoping to succeed. And my father took me for a drive. I remember it was like a day in December, and he took me for a drive in a place in Miami Beach that is like Alton Road, and it's really beautiful homes. I mean, gorgeous, multi-million-dollar homes, on the water, yachts, mansions. And my father's driving through these narrow streets, and as he's going through them, and he looks at me and he says, "I want you to know you're going to have one of these. You can have this in your life." And he's like, "Don't let the grades control that. Don't let the dynamic of everything else in the world control that."
When this was happening, what stage were you?
I was still in law school. I was in law school. I mean, my father, I was in the military and other things like that. I had different desires in life. And my father still is, even though he's passed away now, but my father is my guiding light for sure.
His teachings are still...
Yeah, my father is everything to me.
Wow, amazing. So then, so you were in law school,
mm-hmm.
and what happened next? So I guess you graduated law school.
Yeah, I was in law school.
Where'd you go for law school?
Florida International University had a law school program that was like a tier 3 school. So in the law school dynamic, you have tier 3, 2, and 1. And oddly enough, now FIU is tier 1. It managed to get on there, thank God. I don't know that there is another law school in the country that has achieved what FIU has achieved in its prowess in the legal field.
Wait, so tier 3 is
the
higher
lowest.
Than tier 1? Oh, that's
No,
the lowest.
It's the
okay.
lowest. Yeah. It was, and rightfully so, right? It was a brand new law school, so when it's brand new, it starts in the lower part of the totem pole.
Right. That makes sense.
Like Princeton, Yale, Harvard; those have been around for over 100 years in some cases.
Right.
So it's a very young school, so it naturally is going to start on the lower side of the tiers. Right. But now it's a tier 1 school, which is just incredible to have under your belt, because now I will go to FIU, and people are like, okay, great.
So basically, you're being overly honest, more than you need it to be.
Well, listen, man, it's the way that it is.
Well, you would have aced it if it was a tier 1 anyway. So,
thank you.
So what happened next? You graduated. What was your next step?
Taking the bar exam, which is the next hurdle after, going through law school.
And the Florida bar.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And familiar theme. My father actually stepped in there because I did not pass the bar exam on the first go. Didn't pass it on the second go. Passed it on the third, but I can tell you that was a kick in the teeth at each time. I had missed it because, as anyone will tell you, the bar exam, you missed it by half a point, you're done. It's not like a grace period or like
you need to get everything ace.
you need to
everything.
get not ace everything, but you need to get a certain score. I didn't reach that score on my first attempt or my second attempt. And again, it was that familiar theme of like, okay, well, maybe this is a sign that it's not for me and I should give up. And my father straight up told me, he's like, I don't care what you have to do. You are going to pass this exam.
And then you did on the third try.
And on the third try, I'll never forget, I called him September as when I found out in 2013. I was screaming and crying on the phone. Couldn't believe it. I was so grateful.
Wow.
It's a big blessing, thank God, that I passed. And, you know, to go through that journey and to be in that part of, you know, trying to struggle through it, it was definitely a challenge. It was more of a challenge than it was anything else. And I credit my father once again for pushing me through that.
Wow. So did you go into big law right after that? Or?
Nope. No, I did not. I spent a lot of time when I was in law school, because in law school you have to earn certain credits. So in law school, I did things like I worked for the government and the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And so I worked for them as an investigative intern. And then I also clerked for a number of judges. And then I had been also active in starting what's called the Task Force for Mindfulness in the Practice of Law. And so that controlled the 11th Circuit, which was for Florida, Alabama, and Georgia. And I got to sit on the panel with a number of judges, a number of the preeminent lawyers in the field.
This is all while you were in
I was in law school, waiting for the bar exam. Even post law school, I was still very active in that movement. Still am an active participant in trying to promote mindfulness in the practice of law, which I guess we'll talk about in a little bit. But from that standpoint,
get on the mat, right?
Get on the mat. Yeah, it is very near and dear to me. But from the standpoint of the, you know, being able to kind of go through things, so I was what's called clerking, which is basically you're researching and writing and providing information to the people that you're working for. So you can have that in several manners of clerkship. One is you can clerk for a judge, which is the traditional track. You can do it for an organization. And I did it for both, but then there's a third track, which you can do it for a law firm. So I did it for a law firm, you know, again, as a single father, now going to be, newly married. I was getting on the verge of marriage. I wanted to get my career started. And big law is very selective. It's a very
Harvard A-listers.
Yeah, if you're not in the club, man, you're not in the club.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I wasn't in the club, and I think I'm better for it. And so I took a clerkship for working with this small law firm in Broward County. It was a small law firm, but the lawyer who ran the law firm was considered to have kind of written the law in this area that I was practicing in at the time, which was consumer finance litigation issues, predominantly under the rubric of what is known as foreclosure law.
Oh, okay.
So we would fight against banking institutions to try to help keep people in their homes. And that ultimately would, by the way, be the theme of most of my legal work thereafter. Not foreclosure per se, but utilizing whatever skills God gave me to help people against multi-billion-dollar corporations.
Awesome. So let's fast forward to when you started. First of all, what was the reason or what was the inspiration that made you decide that you wanted to open up your own firm? Or was that always what your plan was?
Nope. I was working for a law firm, loved working for that law firm. In fact, that the first law firm that I worked for, where I was originally a clerk and then they hired me as the attorney when I passed the bar. So there I was, at that point, my pay had been raised and I was very happy. But there was a guy I had heard about it. They called him the guru of all things trial. And I knew in my mind I wanted to be involved in trial law. So I interviewed with that firm. And I had to take a pay cut to go work for this guy. And I didn't even hesitate. I just was like, no problem. I'm going to take that pay cut and work for him because better to learn from him than anybody else. And so oddly enough, in getting to a place where I had worked for that firm, then I continued to grow in that firm. And I did very well for myself as a practitioner, but not necessarily well for myself financially. And even though I was at some point kind of helping to lead the charge in the federal division for that firm, it still wasn't. I mean, my wife and I remember we were borrowing money for food for the Sabbath.
Wow.
And we already had 2 little ones plus my daughters from my prior marriage. So it was a very difficult time.
So that was the trigger to go ahead and break off and start your own thing.
Well, it gets a little bit deep. I wish I could tell you that it was just a yes or no answer to that. As lawyers will tend to do it, it's never just a yes or no. But we had barely any money, and I didn't know what to do. And I had a friend who was very connected with Rabbi Pinto, Rabbi Yeshayahu Yosef Pinto, Shalita. I'm a firm believer that if you ask a rabbi a question, you live and die by that question, whatever the answer is. I mean,
yeah. Once you ask, you're bound.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
And I asked him what I should do, and he said you should open up your own business.
Boom. There we go.
And I had zero money. And I'll never forget my bosses, even at the time, they told me, they're like, "Are you crazy, man? Like, are you?"
You're like, "Yes."
Right. You have zero money in the bank. Zero. They knew, because I would tell them, like, I had no money. And I had many kids, thank God. And I had a wife to support. And I had liabilities to deal with. And they're like, "And now you're going to go out on your own and open your business?" And I'm like, "Yeah." It's pretty much how
so this is getting more interesting than I expected.
Yeah.
So you actually started this from zero.
Yeah.
Wow.
But remember I told you familiar theme?
Yeah.
So
your dad was there in the picture.
So, yeah, I did it. I mean, I pulled the trigger. And my father, being the king of a man that he was like, "All right." He's like, "No problem." He's like, "I hear you making this decision. I hear that you did it. You have guts. No problem. Now I'm going to help you out." And he gave me a loan. And so I took that loan and ran with it.
So what was the first step? How did you start it? You went from, like, everything being handed to you from that, from an intake standpoint, and then just and also, like, you didn't need to hire, you didn't need to do any of the admin things or any of the things that are involved in building a business up until now, and then suddenly you were in that. So how did you?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of get thrust into it, right? I mean, packing up my box was a very humbling experience that day. I remember it pretty well. But there's, God was for sure with me at every step. I had been blessed with my first client. I'm not going to say his name, obviously, for confidential reasons, but I had been blessed with my first client the day I left that firm. Like, the day that I left the firm.
Wow.
The guy
How did that happen?
He just called me out of the blue, and so he and I were friends in the synagogue. And I guess I should probably say that he didn't call me out of the blue then, because it's not actually correct. So I just had called him to say hello, but he didn't answer. And, like, I guess maybe 15 minutes or so later, he called me. He said, "What are you doing right now?" And I was, like, packing up the office, like, as I'm leaving the office. And the office of the people I was working for. And he's like, "Look," he's like, I want to tell you that I was praying to God. I was doing the silent prayer, it's called. And as Jewish people, we pray 3 times a day. Sometimes more, but 3 times a day, depending on the day of the week. And he was asking God in his private prayer to help him because he was so dissatisfied with the lawyer that he had. He's like, "Please help me. Help me, help me, help me." And normally his phone is face down. And for some reason his phone was face up. And as he's saying to God, "Please send me someone that will help me."
Your name would popped up on the screen.
My name popped up. That's how he tells the story. But so he was my first client. And then between him and then there was another guy, and I can say his name. His name is Yosef Goldglans. And this guy, I don't think he'll ever know how grateful I am to him as a human being. Absolutely changed my entire life, 100%, and did it selflessly, and did it lovingly, and just brought me into his company. Not as an employee, but like someone that like, here, let me show you, let me help you.
What capacity was he in? Like
he was an attorney who worked for another firm and opened up his own firm and became wildly successful. And I pray to God that he's even more successful. The guy's brilliant. I mean, to this day, he's completely brilliant. He's just, I mean,
awesome.
Yeah.
How many employees do you have now?
Approximately 20 or so. We have employees in Israel and in America. So we have about 20 or so.
Amazing. So you right now you were 0 employees. It was just you, right? We're holding right now.
Yeah.
And I want to go through the journey of how you got from 0 to 20. There's like something that like clicked, like, okay, I need help. You know, it's or you're like, okay, no, I'm going to get 20 employees.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was sitting on a bus on the way to Uman for Rosh Hashanah, and one of my childhood friends was sitting on the bus with me. He was going through some tough times, and I was going through some tough times, and we just were like, well, why don't we work together? And that was it, man.
Ellie.
Yeah, but that was it. I mean, at the end of the day, I'll tell you that from the standpoint of the transition of moving from one thing to the next, you have to understand, when I went out on my own, I rented out a space in my friend's office, right? And I started off with an office in his office, and then I couldn't afford that because although I had my one client and like little sprinklings of clients here, it wasn't like a success overnight. And you kind of start to second guess yourself because you took this risk, and like, you know, I didn't want to just keep using the loan from my dad, right? And then I couldn't afford that space in his office, so then I went to like a little desk area in another back part of the office, and then he's like, the owner of the office is like, nah, you can't be here.
That's it.
Yeah, even though I was paying for the space, but he's like, you can't stay. And I remember like Ellie came with me that night, and I remember just packing up in the middle of the night, like very late into the night and early morning, and we just were packing up again, and I'm just like, seriously? Like, I just did this. You know what I mean? And like now I'm doing it again. So it was daunting. Like,
and then you went out and rented your own space?
No, I worked in my house. I worked on a Rubbermaid plastic table that, by the grace of God, my wife let me do, and continue to just bust myself every single day. And if I had to go to hearings in different courthouses in different parts of the city, and it took me 3 hours to get on just transportation, I did it. I mean, you either are going to do it or you're not going to do it. It's that burn the ships mentality, 100%, man. That's what it boils down to.
At the time, you didn't have a vehicle. You were taking public transport?
No. I mean, like, if I had to go on the train, at that time, the train was just like a new advent. They had this thing called the Bright Line, and it was just kind of getting started. So going on the Bright Line became a bigger and better deal later on. But yeah, if I had to travel in the car on the way down, on the way up, you're talking about an hour each way. Right. That's a lot of transportation.
Along your journey, what are some big challenges that you've faced, and how you've dealt with them?
I mean, I still deal with them all the time, right? I mean, the challenges just change. I think the Holy Book's right, that is, things you get more challenges come, right? I guess from the non-holy side, it's called more money, more problems. Right?
Yeah.
But the challenges along the way, I mean, that was just to say to yourself, I'm not giving up. That's the challenge. To believe that the next day will get better. I mean, sorry to sound cheeky, but to believe that the day will get better, that tomorrow is another chance, that whatever failures were today, that tomorrow can be better.
Right.
And I'm not always like the moniker for success in that. I don't always like hold up my sign and say, wow, I'm doing great. Like in being able to just believe that tomorrow is going to shine. I have really great people. I surround myself with really great people. I make a big point of doing that. There's a guy named Yechezkel Rodel, a powerhouse of positive influence. Powerhouse. Full faith in God all the time. Eli is not only my best friend, but truly like a brother. And the guy also, when he's down, I lift him up. When I'm down, he lifts me up, you know. But he's a powerhouse also of like good positive energy. And like anyone that knows me will know, I don't deal with negative energy because my whole day is battling back negative energy. I can't deal with negative people. I won't do it. Like if I'll never forget, we had an employee. The guy was a superstar. I mean, a hands down superstar. The guy could do anything. Fired him because he was just so negative. No matter what his production level was, he was so negative. He was producing great, but what he was producing along the way was just
down the energy.
Everybody in the office. You know, look, I don't follow the guy, but I certainly appreciate some of what he has to say. Not everything he says I think is great, but some of what I think he says is really fabulous. Is Gary Vaynerchuk.
Oh, okay, Gary V.
Yeah, and but what he says is right, man. He says if you have a negative employee, it doesn't matter what they're producing. If you have an employee that is fostering negativity in the company, you got to cut him. No matter what he's going to produce for you. No matter how many millions of dollars he'll bring in, it won't matter because that negative energy.
It's like a weed.
Yeah.
The bad apple is just gonna spread and
100%. It'll kill everything and anything you ever tried to build, and I can't have it. I'd rather have an employee that doesn't know what in the world they're doing, seriously, than to have that has positive energy, than to have a guy who's super skilled and is gonna rip everyone down along the way.
All you need is one person to bring down the energy. And it just affects everyone.
Yeah, I remember when I was in the Army, the United States military, and I remember going through the suffering that everyone else is going through, you know, and when the drill sergeants are giving you as many difficult challenges as you could possibly handle, and then breaking you beyond that point, which is the whole purpose of the military. The whole purpose of struggling in the Army is to show you that where you think your mental capability can take you, you can go much further. It's just all in the mind, right? Your body wants to give up. It's just because your mind wants to give up. So they break you in that. And I remember we were in Missouri and we were training, like must have been 115 degrees, and I'm not exaggerating. And we were wearing our BDUs, which are battle dress uniforms, which is like full-on hardcore sleeves all the way down, wearing the boots, everybody hat, whole 9 yards. You got to be still dressed while you're
textile
suffering.
Oven.
Right. And I remember they were just drilling into us, and there were just grown men on every side of me crying. And the drill sergeants kept saying, "Oh, you guys are going to cry? I'm going to make it go longer." And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to these guys crying, and I just screamed out something really nasty. And now, thank God, I don't resort to profanity, but I must have used something profane to tell everybody to stop crying and to just suck it up. And the drill sergeants grabbed me and put me on top of the rocks on another side of the field that we were on. And they told me I got to push the earth until my hands break open. And I did. And
wait, what does that mean?
I mean, literally my hands were all cut open from the rocks that they were making me do push-ups on. Like, but I didn't cry out. I felt they weren't going to break me. And it's just, that is the whole mentality that you have to just have in any business that you're going to start. Doesn't matter what it is. If you're going to do a business, if you're going to go out there and venture to try to do something, you have to be understanding enough. You have to be mentally tough enough to realize that it will get better, but you have to fight. And you can't stop. You can't stop. You can't lick your wounds. There's no time for that. There's just no time for that. and it's as legit on that level, then I cannot tell you how serious that is.
Wow. So let's jump to another topic.
Sure.
How do you deal with the work-life balance? There will be times that, your personal life will take, what I say 99% of you, and it happens, and you're not able to be with your mind on work for, let's say, an extended period of time, a couple of weeks. So how do you deal with those kind of situations in advance, during, and post?
You're saying, what I hear you saying is that how I deal with a situation where my mind won't be on work for a number of weeks.
Yeah, let's say it's a positive thing like a wedding, or let's say it's a challenging thing, like a negative thing that whatever that you're dealing with.
Yeah,
outside of work.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. That's not.
You never have a situation where you.
Nope. Wrong guy, man. No, straight up. Here's the difference. I love what I do. You know what I'm saying?
Preach it.
No, I'm just telling you, I love what I do. It's not you. I don't want to run away from it, and it's crazy because the people that know me know, for example, I don't sleep probably longer than 5 hours. The longest I'll sleep is about 5 hours. That's across the board. I make time for my kids. I make time for my wife because they are everything to me. I mean, everything will stop for that. But I mean, to not be involved in the business, I have it for me. It's not like, oh, when I earn this amount of money, I will achieve this independence from the business. I don't want that independence from the business. I want to be invested in the business. I want the business to be more wildly successful than I can ever imagine, but that doesn't mean my hands are off. I love being invested in the business. So there isn't a period of time where I'm not thinking about it. It was very hard for me when my father passed away because by Jewish law, I had to sign away my business. Like, I don't know. I mean, thank God. I don't know that you would know that. I hope you never do.
Yeah. What is that? Yeah.
During the time of the 7 days of mourning, we're required to sign away our business. I mean, I cannot engage in business at all during that time.
Wow.
Like I literally had to sign a contract, a halachic, a Jewish legal contract that signed away my business. That was very challenging.
You actually meant it when you said sign away.
Yeah, I wasn't joking. I actually had to sign a paper to sign away my business, and then I had to get it back. That was the only time I've ever done that.
Wow.
And God willing, I never have to do it again. But, yeah, I don't have a desire to do that. And I want to say that it would not be possible without my wife and my children. Like I could not achieve anything with it without my wife. Nothing. Not a single thing. If it wasn't for that woman, life wouldn't be happening at all. There wouldn't be life. She is the whole reason why I can work.
So I have a question for you on this. What would you say to someone who is having trouble with the work-life balance and they find themselves that they don't have time for their wife and kids? What would how would you address them?
So I think that the difference is that people get caught up, right? It's an all or nothing mentality. This idea of like, for my life to be balanced, I have to now kiss everything away, and it's not true. It's the reason why they call it a balance is because you have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I think the better question is where do I put my priorities, right? I'm not working so that I can buy myself a fancy car or buy myself some sort of like treat or whatever. I'm
as Gary Vee puts it, the yacht.
Yeah, I don't care about like you can keep all that stuff. I don't care about any of that. I don't care about the fancy car. I don't care about the yacht. I care that my wife feels secure, my children feel secure. And part of that security is knowing that I can be there. So if I can't actually be there, then I actually have not provided them the security. And that's that's when you change we always talk about it. Every week we have firm meetings. I make sure to have our team have a meeting so that we can talk about strategy. We can talk about what's going on internally. We can talk about what's going on inside of them internally, because it's super important to know your team as well. I invest in them as much as anything else. But just like I would invest in them and to try to emphasize their success, I invest in my family because they are the ones investing back in me. Like I said before, man, I wouldn't be able to live if it wasn't for my wife.
They're the backbone.
She is my life.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If I'm not giving back to her, I can't go back and work. Can't go back. She's not like a decoration. She's, I mean, you know, she is the only reason why I'm working.
Right.
So you got to make that time. And part of it is managing your day. It's time management. I start my day some mornings at like 4:30 in the morning.
How do you manage your time? What is there some like secret sauce? There
isn't a secret sauce. I just think it's about it's putting priorities, right? I don't spend my day watching Netflix. I'll tell you that much. You know what I'm saying? I don't. I try to read a lot. I try to invest in like what other people are doing, how other people are becoming successful. But I also make sure that I am the person who is getting the lunches ready in the morning, preparing the water bottles in the morning, preparing the backpacks, getting them up from bed so that my wife can sleep in the morning, because I know she needs that extra strength, right? So that's my investment. My investment is like, I have to be there. I have to, and so waking up in the morning may sound like, he's just trying to get ahead of the game. The early bird gets the worm, right? But it's just a matter of like what worm you're actually chasing. And for me, it's to be there for my family.
I like it. What worm are you chasing? Ask yourself that question every day. No, because a lot of people they're thinking like, okay, I'll make my millions and then I'll be there for my family. And
it's a lie.
The time is just wasting away, and they're not putting, setting aside time, because you're always going to be busy.
Yeah, and it's also a rule of thumb. It's never enough. It's never enough. If you have $1 million, you want 2. If you have 2, you want 4. You have 4, you want 8. Like, it's never enough. Yeah. Never enough. Ellie and I recently we started going to learn Torah in the mornings before we go to work. So that was another part of our investment. But we're cutting hours out of the day now to go learn our Torah, which is really what our purpose in life is, to strengthen our belief in God and strengthen and it. I mean, that's the secret sauce in business. Candidly, believing in God. And I can give you infinite amount of proof on that one. But to go into learning, and I don't care how many phone calls it is. I heard a wonderful story from Rabbi Eli Mansour. From he's one of the Syrian rabbis in New York in America, and he tells a story that in the kollel that he goes to, in the learning center that he goes to in the mornings, there's a very, 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 very successful and wealthy businessman. And while the man is learning, he does not answer his phone. He doesn't look at his phone. He doesn't answer his phone. It's really a test of strength. It's really a discipline that, unless you start doing it, it's like a muscle, like anything else. You go to the gym, you want to work out, you want to get tough. The only way to do it, you got to train those muscles. This is a muscle also. And so this guy, Rav Mansour says, doesn't touch his phone. And so Rav Mansour one day, he tells the story that he walked over to the businessman. He said to him, hey, let me ask you a question. You run this, huge company. You're worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Your phone is ringing off the hook while we're learning, and you don't even flinch. You don't even look at it. So Rav Mansour says the guy turns the phone over and shows Rav Mansour, tells Rav Mansour, come look at this. And he plays the first voice message. Mr. So-and-so, this happened at the factory and da-da-da-da, it's an emergency, we got to... And he says, listen. Plays in the next message. And it goes down sorry, Mr. So-and-so, yeah, we figured it out, it got taken care of. Like literally, across the board, every single phone call, right? And you got to figure out as Ellie talked, when I told Ellie the story, he always says, "Are you the first call guy or the second call guy?" Meaning, are you the guy who's going to pick up the phone right away when the phone rings? Because even though you're in the middle of something, maybe you're not learning Torah. Maybe you're just spending that time with your wife. Maybe you're spending that time with your kids. You're going to pick up the phone every single time when your kid's telling you a story at the end of their day? If you do, good luck. But I can tell you for a fact that story has played out in my own life. When I go to learn Torah with Ellie in the mornings now, I won't touch that phone. And I've seen it myself. Michael, there's a huge problem. We got to deal with this situation. Boom, next call. All right, we figured it out. Don't worry about it. Ignore it.
That's great. I heard actually a powerful point on this. So let's say you're playing baseball with your son, right? Pitcher, catcher, and he sees that you're getting all these phone calls. Or let's say he knows that there's a specific phone call that is really important and that you're missing because you're with him. Or let's say you're missing a very important meeting just to be able to keep your commitment with him. What you're actually doing is not just showing him how important it is. You're actually placing the value of the time spent with him above the value of what this meeting, call, or whatever would be. So if you let's say, right, so you tell your kid you're going to go play bowling with him, and then it turns out you're missing this big meeting because of it. So if you say, no, I got to go to the meeting, what you're basically telling your son is that more important than you is this meeting. So you're here and the meeting's here. Mm-hmm. But when you miss that meeting to be with him, what you're doing is you're placing him over here and the meeting over here. So the meeting holds the same value, but now he is at a higher value because you are missing the meeting for him. So he feels much more important than the thing that you're missing.
One of the preeminent rabbinical figures in the world, I want to say about a generation ago, his students would come into his office whenever they would have an issue. They had a personal issue going on, something was happening at home, the kid was upset, whatever the reason is that brought that kid into that rabbi's office. It was well known that they would walk into the rabbi's office and the rabbi would say, 1 second, take the phone off the hook, put it on the table. Mind you, this rabbi was getting calls from all over the world. Put the phone on the table, off the receiver, okay? And then tell the child, okay, now tell me what your problem is. So that the child knew right then and there, nothing else exists but this conversation. And that's the key to running a business and a family house. I'm not amazing at it. It's still a work in progress. But like I told you before, it's all a work in progress. And as long as you're willing to accept that, I don't have it down pat. I can tell you that I'm going to die trying if I have to. I mean, I will make sure I get it right with God's help.
So let's jump to the next topic. So what are some tips that you would share from your industry? So let's say it's right. So you deal with contracts a lot. Advice you'd give to anyone based on your knowledge in the industry. Anyone that's, starting a business, that's currently in the process of growing a business. There are like for example, in my case, there's something called errors and omissions insurance. Right. So there are lawyers that deal with errors and omissions, correct? So that's something I didn't even know about until like a few months ago. And it's crucial. So what are some things that, like in general, that you feel business owners, more specifically in the service-based industry, but in general, business owners from the stage of about to start a business to 5, 10, 20 employees, what comes to mind?
I mean, right, there are different stages that you've talked about. So from the beginning, I mean, you want to make sure that you are not taking your profits and just wasting them, right? Whatever profits are there should go back into the company. And you should always allocate that this is the salary you're paying yourself. I didn't take a salary for the first 2 years, man.
Wow.
Like nothing, zero. And whatever was for the company was for the company. Mind you, I also was paying back that loan to my dad.
It's interesting what you said there about giving a salary to yourself. I feel like that's a lot of people when they start their own business. Mm-hmm. What they do is they earn whatever money they earn, and then they spend their own money out of that same account.
Yeah.
And they don't do what my financial advisor calls the separation of church and state, where you have separate accounts for personal and for business. You never spend a dime for the business from the personal account. You never spend a dime from the personal account for the business.
Shaquille O'Neal actually credits his financial wherewithal. I mean, Shaquille O'Neal is probably one of the most financially solvent basketball players in the history of basketball, which is crazy when you think about that. Not many basketball players in general, or athletes or musicians or stars, at some point their fame waxes and wanes, and the transition of their financial wherewithal also wanes too, right?
But Shaq kept it going.
Shaq kept it going, and he kept it going, and he credits it to his Jewish accountant. Go figure. But because the guy told him, he's like, I will not allow you to spend this money. Like, you will not spend this money. You will make sure you invest it, because your future is what depends on it. And he credits that accountant with that advice, because at the end of the day, fast money leaves just as fast. And you've got to be able to temper that. Because when you see a big check, your first inclination is, all right, going out of town, eating dinner. Nope. That is when it's time to get down to business and work even harder. And that is a hard discipline. Because when you get to a place where you've gone through the gauntlet and you finally got your little nugget, and you realize,
no.
Yeah, I don't even
no
get to
candy
enjoy
for
it.
you.
Yeah, I don't even get to enjoy it, and that's the reality. Yeah, at the beginning, that's where the stages are at. When you get down the road, because you said 5 years down the road, whatever, 20 employees, etc., it gets to a place where you have to realize you have to still invest in the team. You can't invest in yourself. You have to invest in the team. The way you invest in yourself is making yourself better. How can I be a better leader? When you realize that God put you there to lead these people, that you're working for your team. The team isn't working for you. And when you get that clear in your head, that you are working for them and that they don't really work for you, they're doing work for you, but they don't work for you, you work for them. I make sure that my team has all their things paid for, whatever they need to have taken care of. If they have an issue that's coming on, that we're there for them. Family, we put their families first. We make sure that they're paid first. We have to put them to the front of the line. Because if you're not investing in your team will sense that. They always say that be careful how you speak to your children, because your children can tell whether or not you're being candid and honest with them. Even if you're telling them, X, Y, and Z, whatever that is, if you're not telling them the truth, the child will feel that. And I believe that is the case with one's spouse, and I also believe that is the case with one's team, that they are guiding. If you're just in it for yourself, they'll know.
And they'll leave as soon as they can. Yeah,
and I think that at the end of the day, but I also take the perspective of someone who themselves is not invested in the team. Look, I think it is a two-way street. There is a dynamic that the employee or team member also has to be invested. And if they're not, then they got to go. Because that also sends the wrong message to the people who are invested. And you will find that there are people who are seriously invested, good people, honest people, very solid people. I love our team. I can say that without any qualms. I love our team. They are really good people. And over the years, the people that have left, I sensed that they would leave. And my perspective is good riddance and onwards and upwards for them and onwards and upwards for us.
What would be the cause for someone to hire someone in your industry?
You hire a lawyer. I've thought about this over the years.
Right, so I want to explain, because there's proactive and there's reactive.
Yeah.
Right? So reactive, it's obvious. Okay, I'm stuck. I'm in trouble. I'm in legal trouble. I'm going to call a lawyer.
Yeah, it's not as obvious as you think, though.
Right, that's also true. Yeah, because when right.
Some people who are like in trouble, like, oh, please don't hurt me. Okay, do this, whatever. Who needs a lawyer anyway? They're not going to help me.
I think it's more like they're just going to charge me a lot of money. Whereas sometimes it could be the opposite, where if you what I'm saying, if you hire a lawyer, you actually can be saving money.
Yeah, I mean, my best cases have been the ones I haven't charged anything on. But yeah, I agree with that assessment as well. Right, there gets to a place where, what do they call it? Cheap and expensive out. Right, And there's a saying, if you spend it cheap on the go, you'll spend it expensive on the way out, because whatever you put in, like there's this guy who's always saying, like, you can tell, you ever want to be a closer, there's this multi-million-dollar guy who's always talking on other interviews and things, and one of the things that he says is you want to close a client. The number one way to close a client is tell them you can have a choice of any two of these three things. You can have either cheap, you can have it fast, or you can have it good. You can only choose two, so choose wisely, right? And that really, I mean, I don't know how much that entire adage is correct, but I definitely know that if you're cheap on the front end, you're going to be expensive on the back end. So to that end, you're correct. But you were going to say also there's the proactive and the reactive. So I guess the reactive,
I want to say on that though, I like that. I like what you said there. I use an example of a slingshot, right? So when someone calls me up for a video, and they're looking for the cheapest option, right? So of course I recommend them different people. Like we're clearly not a match, but I like to use the example of a slingshot. Like it's not an iPhone. An iPhone, it's like you get it on Black Friday. You're paying less, same iPhone.
Right.
You're getting it through this, whatever it is. You win it in a raffle, same iPhone.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas in the service-based industry, it's very different. It's especially in art. There's different levels to the quality and the results, the power of the product you're getting. So I use the example of a slingshot. I'm like, the more you pull it back, right, in the wrong direction, the farther it's going to go in the right direction.
Oh, I like that.
So I tell them, I'm like, okay, great. So you're out $1,000 because you found someone for dirt cheap, or $5, you got someone on Fiverr, but that rock is not going to go too far.
Yeah.
Whereas if you actually invest properly and you spend the right amount of money on the right products that are going to get you to, or the right whatever services you need to actually get that exposure, or in my case at least, or in other examples, whatever that applies to there. But if you pull that slingshot far enough in an uncomfortable direction, it can propel you so much farther.
Yeah, I don't know how worthwhile you'll find this anecdote, but in line with that, in like real world example. First of all, your example is great. I actually really like that one a lot with the slingshot.
Thank you. I came up with it once on the spot. I was like in the moment.
It works, man. It works. But I'll never forget. I was learning with a rabbi on kosher food, and so sometimes the rabbis would be, when they're learning about kosher food, they have to learn about it in non-kosher settings, and so they're observing how non-kosher meat, or in this particular story, how chicken is being produced on mass level in these grocery stores. And he was telling me how he would see that on whatever given day, when you'd walk into the store, I don't know if you've ever seen it before. In America, they have these signs, buy one, get one free, or like, chicken thighs, like super cheap. What he would do is he would see how in the back they would find like a box that was going to go bad, or like that there was a worry that maybe a whole group of chickens were sick. So they'd slaughter all of them. And that's how they were able to produce this like buy one, get one free type of thing. So when you think you're getting a deal, what's really happening is you're getting a lesser level of a product. And it really does translate into what's happening even at the grocery store, which is pretty nasty, but it's true nevertheless. And that always stuck with me.
Ouch.
Yeah. But I think, I think to answer both sides of the coin, whether you're reactive or you're proactive, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to the same thing. And that is that you need a lawyer to help you see things that you can't see. And that sometimes is a very bitter pill to swallow. So one of the most famous doctors of all time is Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, also known as the Rambam, Maimonides.
Yeah.
And it was a known thing, despite his fame and know-how and like uncontroverted, unquestionable medical prowess as a doctor, he would never treat a person that was in his family. If he was related to a person, he would never treat them. And they would ask him, why won't you treat someone that's in your family? He said, because there is a part of me that is emotionally tied to this. And if I have emotion, already my vision is skewed. And the reality is that as lawyers, You have to divest yourself from the situation, and that is something that a litigant cannot do on their own, no matter what they say. I'm not emotional about it. Not true. Or someone harmed you that you need to now go after. How are you not emotional about it? So you need that.
A litigant would be as in like your client would be a litigant.
Yeah,
okay.
As someone involved in litigation, right? But that's why lawyers are not just called lawyers. They're called counselors. From our standpoint, we have to counsel our client. It's also why our communications with our client are so confidential, and why confidentiality is like the pole star of like everything that we practice in. We practice in this safe zone that as long as you're not in the commission of a crime or like doing something to harm someone else or yourself, no one's gonna ever know about it. I think that comes from just being in a situation where that we're providing that safety, but at the same time we're providing the client with the ability to understand we have to tell you something that you may not want to hear, but it's okay because it's in our private zone. And that is the benefit of having a lawyer, because we have to see it unemotionally. We have to be divested from it, something that you can't do if you're involved in the situation.
Okay, so let's talk about, so this is where like sort of reactive action. So like obviously if you're in dispute over a contract, then there is something that triggers the potential, need to, or the, okay, I might need a lawyer. Whereas I want to talk about a little bit more of the proactive approach. So when does one who's, let's say, building a business, the big businesses have a legal team. Small businesses sometimes will have a lawyer that they work with. Many businesses do not. So what kind of business would you tell, and at what stage would you say they need to have a lawyer that they work with on a constant basis, and for what?
Yeah, I think every business really needs to have a lawyer. And I don't say that I'm not. It's not like an advertisement for using our firm. But I think every business needs a lawyer, either for consultation to get you out of that emotional place, right? Because even think about it from a business perspective. Even as a business owner, there's an emotional side to it, right? I need to earn this amount of money. So then the question becomes, well, what are you going to do to earn that money? Sometimes you're going to do things that may be not so legal. And you need a lawyer to tell you, no, that cannot be done because it is illegal, right? So I think it's at every stage, candidly. I would tell a business, any business, that the same way you need a pen for your office, or you need a business card, or you need a lawyer, whether it's on retainer, which means that you're paying for them based on a certain amount of money that you're depositing every month, or you have a contract with them that you can use them per hour, or you can, you speak to the lawyer every time that you need them and you pay them for that time. I don't know too many lawyers that'll go for that, but at the end of the day, because they're running businesses also, but even lawyers need lawyers to help their businesses. So I think that is why, from the nooks and crannies creation side of it, there are what are called business lawyers, right? They actually help form a business. They do all the paperwork. Why is there paperwork for a business? Why don't I just hang up my shingle and I don't need that paperwork? Yeah, you need that paperwork because there is red tape from the moment you started. You're transacting money. You're taking money for a service or supposed to provide something to someone for the money that you've now transacted, and the government has a vested interest. Doesn't matter what government you're in or what government you're under, has a vested interest to protect that transaction to make sure that it is a legitimate business. So you need a lawyer to make sure that you are navigating that properly. We are not those kinds of lawyers, by the way. We are not that lawyer. As my clients will tell you, I am the one guy they never want to have to see. They don't want to need me, but if they ever do, they know that I'm there to help them.
Right.
And I think that's at the end of the day, that's what we're there for. We're not at that stage. Like, you want to build a business, there's tons of lawyers out there that'll help you with that. You know what I'm saying? We're not that company. We're the company that when things have gone wrong terribly, whatever the stage it is, then we're going to try to help get you out of it. And that doesn't necessarily mean from the reactive side. That also means proactively.
How does that work proactively?
I mean, if a governmental agency, for example, is messing around, doing the wrong thing, I had a guy the IRS was going after for like $15 million. Oh,
wow.
And we had to get out there and proactively engage. We had a situation where a company owed our client money. An insurance company owes the client money. That happens all the time. They never pay what they're supposed to, ever. I mean, if insurance companies paid what they contract to pay,
they go out of business
in a second. In a second, man. It's crazy. I always say, and I'm sorry for the insurance practitioners or insurance providers, I should say, that are out there listening, but I think at the end of the day, from the standpoint of insurance, it is legalized theft. I think it's total garbage. Total garbage. And so when our clients don't get the money that they've actually paid for, right? They pay their premium. They're supposed to get paid as a compensatory manner. If they're not getting paid that money back, so we got to sue to get it. Or if a bank is trying to wrongfully take someone's home, we got to pay to stop that. Cannot tell you how many times I've had to do that. And it happens a lot.
So let me ask you, so someone that's looking to hire a lawyer, let's say, whether it's a lawyer to, help him set up his business and with the day-to-day and contracts with clients, which is something that you don't necessarily do, or in a situation where their home is being foreclosed or their insurance company is messing them over or whatever it is, and they know they need to get a lawyer. How does one separate? How does one vet and search and find a qualified attorney? Because unfortunately, in every area, especially in the service-based industry, there's always going to be for every good lawyer, there's going to be 2 or 3 crooks, or for every good dentist, there's going to be 2 or 3 people that are going to bang your teeth out of shape. So how does one vet someone in a professional in your industry?
I'm a firm believer that all business interactions are like marriages, like mini marriages. I think it's dependent on the people. So if the person you're working with, you have a good relationship with, and the attorney strikes you as someone that's a good person, or someone that you're willing to work with. A lot of clients get caught up in this idea of like, I need a pit bull. Well, you're going to pay for that pit bull. And I mean, like, there's this guy, he's considered to be like the #1 divorce attorney in South Florida. But by whose standard? Because you ask the judges, they can't stand the guy. And when you dig deeper and you find out who this guy is, he'll eat his own clients for breakfast. He doesn't care. It's just money for him. It's horrible. And I've gone up against him, and there's no like reasoning with him. And until the judges the judges like get fed up with him, and in my case they happen to put him in his place. But it just is. You got to figure out what it is that you want. So right. So but
how do you detect that? So that's a good example.
It goes back to what you're looking for, right? When you met your wife, right? You knew what you were looking for. She knew what she was looking for. When you both
she was actually looking for someone the opposite of me.
Okay,
that's a whole separate story.
That's a different podcast. But I think at the end of the day, when couples know what they're going after and they're not willing to compromise in that, you have to figure out what your goal is. If your goal is just to make the other side suffer, know that there's a price for that, right? That's ultimately so. I turn away clients like that. If I have a client that they're just out for blood, we're not for you. The reason why is not for any. Look, I'm happy. You want to pay $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for me to go and make someone else suffer? Well, first of all, I won't do it if there's no real reason for that to happen. But let's say the other guy really wronged you, and you're coming to me telling me about how emotionally they got. So I'll let you vent. Go ahead. Talk about it all day long. Spend that time with me. Spend that hour venting to me. But then I'm going to set you straight and tell you, this is what it's going to cost for me to do what you're asking me to do. And if they did this wrong to you, here's the real way to get it done, and done really well. And this is what it's going to cost to get it done. Because you never really know.
This is after spending $800 of venting.
Well, no, I don't charge for that initial consultation, man. But I think that's also part of the business too. Because at the end of the day, remember that guy Yechezkel Rodel I told you about?
Yeah.
I remember he told me it was the most brilliant advice for an attorney ever. And he said sometimes the best client you have is the one you say no to. And it's so true. Because if you just chase those dollar signs, forget about it. You're going to suffer because that client will drag you through the mud. And then after they've paid you and you've done everything they asked you to do, they'll take you through the mud again. And it's just like, give me a break. Give me a break. So better to have never gotten started than to get started. That's why I will not charge for that initial consultation because I want to get to know who that other side is, if it's a good marriage or not.
It's actually a good question. How do you deal with difficult clients? Let's say you've taken on a client and it's just an absolute nightmare, and you're losing more money than you're getting from him, first of all, and just in terms of mentally, it's affecting people in the office, or it's affecting you. How do you deal with that kind of situation?
I think it goes back to what we spoke about at the beginning. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I try to remove myself from any negative situation. I don't have time for negativity. I just don't. Because I have to, it's an internal battle in myself to get rid of negativity as it is. So I don't need the other negative things in my life, right?
So how do you terminate a relationship with a client?
Whatever I have to do. That's how I do it. Whatever I have to, the client wants money, take the money. I don't care. Just take it. Get out of here. Don't ever call me again. Take the money, run. Get out of here. Seriously, it is like that, because if I got to get away from them, I got to get away from them, and I genuinely live by that. I don't want that person. What do I need the client for? Like, and then it goes back to what I said also, right? Do I believe that God is providing for me, or do I believe that this person who's treating me like garbage is providing for me?
That's a deep question, which is very hard to really.
That is the sole question in being able to be a business owner. Because if you live your life thinking that it's what walks through the door that's going to get you that money, and it's not God that gets you that money, you will lose that business, guaranteed. Not even a question. And this is non-denominational. I'm not preaching Judaism or not preaching Judaism. I'm telling you straight up, 100% unadulterated. If you believe in God and you are faithful to that, and to a fault, meaning you will never lose that. That no matter what wind, what storm comes your way, whatever's knocking on your door, you will still believe in God and not compromise in that belief, you'll succeed. Because that's the real test, man. When it comes to, are you going to compromise on your ethics and morals for $1? Are you going to suffer through a disrespectful, recalcitrant, mean-spirited client? Are you going to fight over money?
I don't even know what recalcitrant means, but it sounds cool.
What are you going to fight over money? You got to make that choice. You're going to fight over money and think that money's never going to come back to you. It'll pay dividends. Like I told you, man, if you're cheap on the front end, you're going to be expensive on the back end. Yeah, it works like that midstream too. Right? You say to yourself, "Oh man, client doesn't really deserve that $5,000." Yeah, but what's it going to take for you to keep that $5,000? You can't waste the business resources, the skill. I mean, you yourself, man, you're a skilled guy. I mean, from that standpoint, what's your time worth? And the one thing you got to know, and this is what lawyers always seem to forget, we're selling time.
Exactly.
But I got news for you. It's not just lawyers. It's everybody. It is a commodity that can never be returned. Ever. You spend one moment with someone, that is one moment that person took that you will never, ever get back. And as long as you're willing to accept that you just gave up that time to that person, then fine. But if you're not willing to accept that, then you got to really rearrange your priorities. And that goes back to what we were talking about before, man. Right back to the whole family and children and investment in yourself. I invest a lot in myself.
Who are you giving your minutes to?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah. Every second counts.
Because money is fungible, but minutes are not.
Yeah. There's this idea that time is money. No, it isn't.
Time is time.
Time is time. Time is much more valuable than money. Much more valuable. You can never buy that time back, which is why I'm not willing to waste it.
Wow. So what's one challenge that you live with on a daily, weekly, monthly basis that like you keep that either keeps presenting itself or that's ever present, and sort of how do you deal with it?
Faith in God, I think, is probably the biggest challenge.
Expound.
Lack of patience comes down to a lack of faith. Anger comes down to a lack of faith. Sadness comes down to a lack of faith. Doubt, lack of faith, right? Right. I mean, right. Yeah. But I don't mean doubt in that sense. I mean doubt in like you can look at a bank account sometimes and be nearing a level that's so low that you're like, how in the world will we ever get this done? This project that we're working on, or how am I going to make payroll right now? And you get to those places, and you gotta just say, all right, I'm buckled in, I'm ready to go. I mean, that's it. But it is a muscle, and if you don't train it, and if you don't work on it, and if you don't fight against it, against the natural inclination, which I will tell you 100% is to doubt and to cry and to scream and to lose patience and all those things that I talked about a minute ago, those things all stem from a lack of faith, but it is a real battle every single day. A real battle, there's no question. And that is what I struggle with every single day. I can sit here and talk about how much faith I have in this and that and give examples of that. Yeah, so what? That was then. Where is my faith now? The test will always come, man. It always comes. You just got to be ready to know that it's coming and ready to fight back. Because it will be there. It will present itself. And the moment you're starting to say, my muscles are good, I'm ready to go. Okay. All right. Now you're going to have a harder challenge.
Exactly. As soon as you say that it's, this was all me that got me where I am today.
Yeah. Anyone on my team will tell you. It's I kid you not, it's actually in all of their contracts that it talks about the hierarchy of the firm. Number 1, God.
That's great.
Like, I don't care. They don't have to believe in anything, but they need to know that I believe.
It also comes to humility. As Gary Vee says, I will out humble you any day.
Yeah, I mean, I hear. Humility is a process. Moses was humble, and I'm still struggling to figure out what that is. I don't know what real humility is.
Well, it's a part of it is understanding that any achievements that I make are not necessarily because I am great and I'm amazing. It's because God granted me that achievement, and I put my efforts out, and the results came. But anyone else could have put the same efforts out and not gotten the results. So the fact that I'm boasting and bragging about where I am is just arrogant, and it's not factual, because it's not because of me where I am. We're all here to just do the best we can, and if you're granted with results, it's because God decided to grant you with the results, and it's not because you're this amazing, powerful, awesome person. So
yeah, I don't know. I disagree with that a little bit. I'll be honest.
Go ahead.
I think that, let's say, I think a person has to see that God gave them gifts. He didn't give it to everybody. He gave you that gift.
Yeah.
I think the humility is saying, now that he gave me that gift, what am I doing with it? Like, am I adorning myself with the crowns and jewels so that I can feel better about myself, right? Or am I doing it for something greater, something bigger, something more important? And if that is in line with God, I mean, again, like I said, I'm struggling to figure out. I'm still on that road of figuring out what humility is. But at the end of the day, to answer the initial question, I think it all comes down to challenges of faith. That is the biggest threshold for any business owner. And I don't think that it comes down to watching a YouTube video or hearing Tony Robbins or Gary Vee or any of that. These guys are speaking, Tony Robbins is a multi-billionaire. Gary Vee is, in the hundreds of millions, they're, if not more, they are serious money players, and they build their business off of that. And you can't sell grit, man. You can't sell grit. And they're in the business of selling grit. And I think a lot of the problem is that they light a fire for people that can go out real easy. They light that fire in that moment. And look, maybe they have I'm sure they have amazing success, but grit comes through effort. Grit comes through work. Grit is work. It is that idea of like fighting back, and it only comes through doing it. If you're going to sit on the sidelines dreaming of what it is to be a business owner and that I'm only going to start my business if everything's in order, you're never going to start your business, which is why I needed Rabbi Pinto Shlita to tell me, get out there and do it. And then it was a burning of the ships, man. There was no turning back.
What are some things you wish you knew a few years ago that you know right now?
That is a good question.
It's one of my favorites.
Enjoy more, maybe. I would tell myself to enjoy more.
Take more time to yourself?
No. I don't
do the same things you're doing, but you enjoy the process?
Yeah. I feel like sometimes I'm battle tried, you know what I mean? Like I'm battle worn, and I've gone through a lot. And going through those roads.
Taking your beatings.
Yeah. Maybe to change the optics and see that they were never beatings to begin with.
Wow. Yeah, I'm saying when you look back on all these things, you see the results that came out of these beatings, then you realize that these were kind of like a workout. You rip the muscle and it gets stronger.
Yeah. I mean, King David says that when I'm up there, you're with me, and when you're down there, you're like even closer to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, he says that you only achieve greatness through suffering. Many people think that means they need to make themselves suffer, and as long as I'm suffering I think at the end of the day, what that means is that there's no such thing as really suffering, and it's a hard thing to come to terms with, because God's always there.
So we're actually way out of time.
Sorry.
No. I'm good with that. I just don't want to keep you anymore.
From my standpoint, man, I like the conversation. It's good.
Oh, okay, great, awesome. Listen, maybe we could do this again. But I wanted to ask you before we split ways. I wanted to ask you, as what's his name would say, as we land the plane. I want to ask you, tell me about this get on the mat thing you have going on, because I want to hear about the inspiration behind it, what it is, and what anyone that's seeing this, what they should know about it.
So Get on the Mat, it starts off from, when I was a kid. My father, blessed memory, had me in martial arts already at 4. As I grew older, middle school, high school, was on the wrestling team. As I went into college, I joined a team called F2 under a guy named Mike Lee, who runs the Jungle in Orlando. It's a MMA gym out there. Mike Lee is an incredible martial artist. His team then was phenomenal also. Like I said, it was called F2. And so I was very heavily into MMA and cage fighting. And I mean, I was like obsessed with it. I spent years and years and years doing it. In 2007, around there, I had gotten into a car accident. And I had really hurt my spine. So probably about a year or so later, maybe 2 years later, I finally got back into trying to do martial arts, but I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which I had really dabbled a lot in when I was on F2, kind of started when I was doing it every single day. I was training other people in it, and I was working with some really, really talented fighters. And I just started realizing how it would make me feel, and how, just in general, life was different. Again, my optics were changing. So then as things progressed, and I got into really focusing on mindfulness in the law, I happened to just come across an article that was talking about jiu-jitsu. And they were saying that it triggered the same synapses in the brain as when someone's playing a game of chess. And between that and breathing, which is a fundamental aspect of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's also a fundamental aspect of mindfulness and meditation, breath, the control of the breath. So I started trying to figure out how the interplay would be there with mental awareness and mindfulness in the practice of law. And it worked well, and other attorneys found it to be helpful for them. And in Florida specifically, it was a big issue where attorneys were either taking their lives or destroying their lives through substance abuse. So I had started a program called Get on the Mat, MATT, Mental Awareness Through Training. And the Young Lawyers Division of the Florida Bar picked it up. They're like the largest membership sub-part of the Florida Bar. And I worked with a guy who I still work with every day. His name is Jim Allers. He is by far the most incredible Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach I've ever seen. MMA coach also, from Allers Martial Arts. And also Wagner Osha from Hollywood. And I teamed up with these two guys to do a presentation that got a lot of views and got a lot of people's attention. And so we've just been carrying it through to tell lawyers in the state of Florida that if you are struggling, that someone from our organization will come to help you by offering you free jiu-jitsu and help get you onto the mat so that you can help to clear your mind, because it does work in that way.
Is this something that's specifically common amongst lawyers because of the nature of the business, or is this just
You're talking about mental
Yeah.
struggling? Yeah. You're fighting your clients, you're fighting the other side, you're fighting the judges, you're fighting whatever personal demons may otherwise be being dealt with by that attorney.
So the constant state of conflict.
It's that you live in conflict, and some people can hack it and some people can't. I don't think anybody really can. I mean, if you ask me honestly, I don't think anybody can handle it. I think no one is cut out to do that. And we live in a world now where it's much more demanding. Like, you have to fight extra hard. You have to do this. And whereas you used to be out of the business at or out of the office, I should say, at like 5 p.m., no phone, there's no cell phone, there's no emails. It used to be like that, but it's not like that anymore. Like,
So you're in it like all day.
all day long, all the time. Doesn't matter what it is. And clients and employees, and they have, no one has any respect for anyone else's time, which is why you have to make your time. So yeah, I think it's something that is absolutely a pernicious struggle that every single attorney goes through. The sad part is that there's no empathy for the attorneys that are suffering, because you signed up for it. This is what you chose for your life path. No one chose to go into fighting conflicts all day long. I didn't choose to have a client who's a piece of work. I didn't choose to go against an opposing counsel who's out of their mind. And you find that sometimes. There are opposing counsel that I've gone up against that you literally say to yourself, this person should be disbarred. They should not be allowed to practice. And maybe in some cases should probably be in handcuffs. Like, there's some really bad people that practice the law. So yeah, I think it's a necessary. I think it is necessary. And if it's not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which offers that holistic approach through, like I said, triggering the brain synapses, where that you're, not just simply letting out aggression, but you're triggering thoughtfulness and mindfulness, triggering breath control, and also being able to realize that even in the craziest situation where your literal life source is being choked out of you, but you have to remain calm in the most difficult scenarios. That's a level of discipline that you need to know also, just not to lose your cool when things can get really rough, not to lose that. I think that that's what jiu-jitsu offers. I'll tell you, empirically, the Japanese did a study on, they took like half of an office, and half of the office that was really stressed out, they gave punching bags to. They kept it in their office. The other half of the office, they let them do like, really nothing. It was just, they just had to kind of work through their issues without anything. And everybody that they gave the punching bags to in the office actually showed a higher level of stress. Yeah. It's counterintuitive. The idea isn't just to let out your stress on anything. And I'm just going to beat this thing into a pulp.
I wasn't expecting that to go in that
Yeah,
direction.
right? No one ever is, man. But it's crazy. That study is out there. You can check it out. The Japanese found that the employees that were using the punching bags in their office became a lot more stressed.
So what is it about this this mental awareness through training that helps people alleviate stress?
It's like I said, man, with breath, knowing that in really challenging circumstances that you can survive it and make it out. So it's the mental knowledge base, the acuity, the breath, the discipline. There's a lot of steps that I think jiu-jitsu offers. It is something that that's unique. It's very, very special. And there's a lot of, you'll find there's like hashtag jiu-jitsu lifestyle, because it is a lifestyle. You live it when you're in the sport. It's a lifestyle. Wrestlers are known to be very brash, tough dudes. I mean, really tough dudes. Wrestlers are very tough. Jiu-jitsu guys are also very tough, but they're also like, all right, everything's okay. Don't worry. Everybody's got the hand signals. They have their own hand signal. It's, everybody, jiu-jitsu is a culture by itself. I don't know. I thank God every day for it.
Do you wanna give like a look at the camera, give like a 20-second invite, like a little video? 20.
Yeah, look, anybody that's struggling in the state of Florida. Currently, we're only in the state of Florida, but anybody that's struggling in the state of Florida, that's an attorney, if you need it and you're feeling that stress weighing on you, come out and see us. Contact me. Feel free.
Get on the mat.
Get on the mat. Mac Legal PA. That's how you'll reach me.
So amazing. I don't want to take any more of your time. I've already
man.
taken like 2 hours of it.
All good, man. Look, conversation's conversation. So
yeah. Well, this has been awesome. Actually, this has been
all right.
amazing.
Cool.
I'm glad I managed to catch you in like the 3 days that you're in the neighborhood.
It's all good.
And thanks for coming in.